Good morning. Welcome into 104.5 The Zone. We're happy to have you here for the next 3 hours. 615-737-1045. If you want to jump in at any point, Jackson and myself, we got you covered. We've got Titans and Colts to discuss, and we're going to get into a little bit of Tennessee and their schedule ahead and why these next two games, are as important as any two they'll play. Obviously, Florida, Alabama, they have high stakes anytime you talk about that as a Tennessee fan. But now that the math has changed on how they get into the 12-team college football playoff, if they're going to get in the college football playoff this year, we have to talk about Florida specifically today. We'll do that. Chris Doring, the former Florida wide receiver, will be here at noon. You'll hear from Brian Callahan today. He'll get you ready for Colts Week. We'll carry that press conference live. Jackson, I almost killed a salesperson driving into work today. I'm starting to even push it on myself. Like the stress is not worth how late I push the envelope to leave my house every day.
What time do you pull into the parking lot?
9:58 and change. What time I arrived at work today. I couldn't get this person to move. There's one parking spot right by the gate, okay? There's one parking spot right where I need it to be, closest to the door, closest to the entrance to our parking garage here. And this gentleman, whose name I do not know, I haven't met everybody downstairs quite yet.
Your fault.
Because I get here at 9:58 and I'm out by 12:55. Every day, bud, without fail. This gentleman is standing in the middle of the parking space. He's on the phone. I assume he's making a sales call. I assume he's talking to one of the wonderful partners that we have around here on the radio station. I assume he's doing very important business and cannot be bothered or is not distracted, but he's doing his job. And I'm, late to work, almost late to work. I haven't been late. I don't think I've been late since I went to Vegas. And I came back and I got caught behind a train. I was going to make it until that train got in my way.
You've texted me about the train a couple of times.
The train is an eternal frustration for me. I can't beat the train. I feel like I'm going to beat the train every time. But today, my near lateness almost cost a human life. So my apologies to the gentleman downstairs who I almost hit driving into work today. But that's not what we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about the Titans and the Colts. Big game, two teams trying to figure out their path forward in the AFC South. I think that in particular, these two teams have a lot of similarities. In fact, they're not too terribly different. There's a couple areas where they're clearly and obviously separate from one another, in particular defense, which we'll talk about Will Levis and what he's up against, based on also what he's previously faced, because whatever the quality of the opponent of the offense or the quality of the offensive opponents have been, defensively, it feels like he's had pretty tough sledding. Now, I'm not going to make excuses for Will Levis today. Greg Cosell of NFL Films, he's going to be on with us at 10:20. Since Lucas is out and I'm responsible for guest booking, we decided to consolidate the install today. So if you listen to the install podcast, we're going to do it live at 10:20 today. And I appreciate Greg working with my schedule because we got Titans practice. And honestly, Jackson, I'm going out there first and foremost, as I assume everybody is going out there today, to try and see if the quarterback, one, is throwing, and two, what he looks like when he throws.
Or if he's making a weird face while he does it.
Man, I feel bad for him because he is very expressive and the internet is very quick to pounce on that. I didn't not to, make light of a human being who's clearly and obviously in terrible pain because he sprained his AC joint diving for a third down or diving for a first down on third down trying to make a play. I didn't see it during the game. The Will Levis face when he's sitting on the bench and looking over at who's sitting next to him on the bench.
I believe it's Mason Rudolph.
Okay, Rudolph sitting on the bench talking about the injury, deciding whether Will Levis is healthy enough to go back in and throw, and then he scrunches his face up like he smells something bad, and very quickly the internet capitalizes. So starting to feel bad for the guy. The guy can't be in pain on the sideline because he just landed funky on his shoulder without getting dragged across the surface of the internet. Either way, What he looks like today is very important. What he looks like tomorrow is very important. What he looks like on Friday is very important. And it's always critical based on the quarterback's week of practice. We don't get to see the full scope of practice, so it's limited to stretch and individual periods, and even more limited these days is we are not allowed to shoot the quarterbacks during drills where they are either handing the ball off to another player or throwing the ball to another player, Jackson. So it has even further limited our ability to share with the audience what this player looks like every day in practice. And that was before the injury. That's a new thing under Brian Callahan. But you got to figure out if he's healthy enough to do the job and whether he's going to be the player that gives you the best chance for success. If they're both healthy, who gives them the best chance for success on Sunday?
Probably Rudolph.
Why?
Just more experienced. Been there, done that kind of thing.
Sure. And this is one game. It's a pretty important game for how the rest of the season's going to go. Only AFC South game for the next 6 weeks.
I also don't think Levis will be 100%.
Now, he's played through injury before, which is something that we're going to talk about a little later on. That's why his draft stock took a beating in 2022. He was great, excellent at Kentucky in 2021. People who are smarter with draft analysis than I were talking about potentially, if he strings together another season like the first one that he had at Kentucky, you could talk about this player potentially as the number 1 overall pick because the traits are so impressive. It's what makes him attractive to an NFL coaching staff, maybe not quite to the scale of Richardson or C.J. Stroud, but he's clearly and obviously got high-level NFL traits. The question is, can he put it all together, which is what we're talking about this season. If he's not 100% healthy, can it be a good opportunity? I'm trying to think if something positive can come from him playing with an injury, because he's going to have to play through injury at some point in his career, right? You can't wait till a player's 100% healthy to throw him back out there. He's going to have to learn to do it. So a part of me, Jackson, and this is the place that we're in now after weeks and weeks of talking about how to best rein this maniac behavior that he sometimes has in a little bit. Can it reel him in a little bit if he's out there playing with an injury and he's not as willing to throw his body around or make, I don't know, costly mistakes? Am I reaching with this by saying, all right, if he's 80%, throw him out there? Maybe he's a little more conservative with the way that he himself handles his style of play, and it's not quite so maniac mode.
If it was his non-throwing shoulder, I'd agree.
Yeah.
I think with it being his throwing shoulder, you worry about. Remember when Tannehill sprained his ankle? He really couldn't step into throws, and it was more costly to have him out there than to not.
Well, and it's also a matter of, are you talking about in 2022?
Either. He couldn't step into throws when he hurt his ankle.
Yeah, the high ankle sprain, it's a difficult thing to navigate, especially for a quarterback with a bad offensive line. And, there's reason to believe that the Titans' offensive line can be better than what we've seen through these first couple of weeks. But it's also got to be quarterbacked by a guy who's willing to let the ball go and be much more quicker and decisive with his progressions, with his ability to isolate and eliminate in real time, whether that's, and the predetermined throw stuff we've talked about with Brian Callahan. It's kind of a nebulous term, but there's a lot of different things that you're paying attention to, and it starts today. So whether or not he gives them the best chance to succeed on Sunday is going to be determined by the next 3 days of practice, and we'll be there to document it for you. Like I said, Brian Callahan is going to speak in the noon hour. We'll also have Chris Doring of the SEC Network to talk Gators and Vols. Greg Cosell of NFL Films. He's next. Welcome back to the show. We are fueled by Hattie B's Hot Chicken. 615-737-1045 is the number. If you want to jump in at any point, you can. Greg Cosell is going to jump in the Zoom here in just a second. We'll get his thoughts on this upcoming game. We will also talk about a couple of different things around the NFL because there was big AFC South news this morning. Houston Texans put wide receiver Nico Collins on IR. That's a huge loss. Now, it's not going to impact the Titans specifically. I mean, it could, theoretically, but let's just say that he misses the required 4 games. Titans and Texans are in the month of December, closer to the month of December at this point, and that would not impact them. But he's leading the NFL in receiving. 567 yards so far this season. He had a hammy against the Bills in a win that Buffalo basically handed on a silver platter to the Texans, but injured it on a 67-yard touchdown catch. In the first quarter, he was pretty quickly ruled out for the rest of the game. Houston went on to win by a field goal, 23-20, 2 receptions, 78 yards before he had to sit. That's a big loss. Texans are 4-1. Titans and Colts, who are going to be scrambling to try and get to at least compete for a wild card spot in the hunt type of stuff as we get later in the season. Now that we're into the month of October, the divisional games matter a lot. The Texans, Jags, and Colts are all going to have played a lot more divisional games than you by the time you get to the really tough part of your schedule, at least where that trying to figure that out matters the most at this point. So we'll get into that with Greg as well. But there's a lot of different tactical parts of this game that I'm curious to hear Cosell discuss. Because the Colts, Gus Bradley, their defensive coordinator, they're trying to figure it all out at this point. In terms of total yardage, they're the worst in the league. And it is something that is really attributed to their secondary. The Jags ran away from them very, very quickly in this game. Now, we know that the Colts are cursed when it comes to playing in Jacksonville. Joe Flacco tried to will them back to victory at the end, but still, they were already out of it. It took way too much to try and claw themselves back in. 5 games in right now, more than 2/3 of the season ago. Does that make you feel any better about the Titans? 615-737-1045 is how you jump in. Just knowing that there's still, it's such a long amount of time between these games. And when you have that much time to sit and think and react and overreact to each week's results without trying to keep it in context, like how many people are freaking out about the Bengals right now? Bengals are 1-4.
It's probably time to start having some concern. Although I do think the Bengals are a really good football team.
Well, you see, but they're 1-4. And I think most people would agree with you. They think the Bengals are a really good football team. I don't think the defense is not good, or at least it hasn't been throughout the start of the season. But like by the time the Bengals get here in, what is that, week 15, are we going to be talking about a different version of that team at this point? I just think that there's so much football yet to be played that there's a proper amount of reaction each week. But to get too spun out of control in the first third of the season, I think there's some things that you can learn from the Titans and the Colts and the Jags and everything that a lot of these teams are going through right now. Greg Cosell of NFL Films is here. Normally we would do this later in the afternoon, but Greg has been kind enough to accommodate my schedule today. Hey, buddy.
I think we should overreact to everything that's going on. I think it's time to make definitive statements about everything.
I knew you'd appreciate that as much as anybody that I talked to, Greg, because it's just, it seems like it's an annual thing that we have to talk ourselves off the ledge or talk a fan base off the ledge about what their team is going through. And I'm just using the Bengals as an example. 1-4 start, tough to dig yourself out of that hole, but we would agree that the Bengals at least are a very good offense, if not a good team.
Well, funny. It's funny that we're having this conversation right now because I'm watching the Bengals offense as we speak. I mean, not actually as we're speaking, but you know what I mean. And Joe Burrow's pretty good, by the way. And it's funny, talking about that as well, I actually saw because we have TVs on in our area here. You've never been to my office, but we have TVs on in the area. And I stepped out the other day to go to the men's room, and I saw on some talk show, sports media talk show, do the Bills have a Josh Allen problem? And I'm thinking to myself, do you really want to have that conversation? I watched that tape. He had a bad game. It was probably one of his worst games that he's had in quite a while. Putting aside the stats are just representative of the manner in which he played. But 2 weeks ago, we were talking about him, people are, as the MVP of the league, which of course is silly after 3 games as well. But now all of a sudden, somebody's just having a debate as whether they have a Josh Allen problem. I think we need to kind of slow down a little bit. Let the season play a few more games. What do you think?
As somebody who is one of these vultures and loudmouths, Greg, I got to have a little reaction in the mix.
That's why we love you, Buck,
But yeah, to your point, like, Josh Allen is the saving grace of the Bills' offense. Like, it's, if anything, they should be talking about the wide receiver depth there, because I think that was the first time that
it happens in the league. There's 17 games. It's really hard to be great for 17 games. Obviously, we tend to notice that more with quarterbacks because they're the most visible player. But there's a lot of players, guys who are really high-level players in the league. You know what? They have bad games on occasion, too. They're just not as visible as quarterbacks.
Greg Cosell of NFL Films is here with us. We're doing a live version of the Install podcast. It'll be available in your podcast feeds later. You can always go back and watch each episode on YouTube. Normally, we don't do it during the radio show, but Greg was doing me a favor here today. So we're through 5 weeks, but 4 games for the local professional football team, Greg.
Yeah.
How would you assess them from a 1,000-foot view as they get ready to come out of this bye week and face their first divisional opponent?
I would say that under a new coaching staff, they're clearly a work in progress, which, by the way, for someone like myself who's been watching coaching tape since 1991 and has been with NFL Films, studying the NFL since 1979, I would say that, to me, that's 100% expected. I can go back, and maybe there are some older listeners, and I'm not making a direct comparison. I'm just talking about the way things play out and can play out over time. I remember when Joe Gibbs was hired by the Washington Redskins, and his first season, they started off 0-5, okay? And everybody in Washington was saying, we got to fire this guy. This guy can't coach. And, again, I'm not comparing Brian Callahan to Joe Gibbs. That's not my general point. And I hope people understand that that's not what I'm saying. But, I think sometimes when there's a new coach putting in a new scheme with younger players, a quarterback who's not even started 17 full season games, I think you have to let it develop. And I understand a fan base. Believe me, I'm in the Philadelphia area. I certainly understand a passionate fan base. I get it. But you have to let it play out and develop. And, I think that there's a wait and see aspect here. I, for one, am curious to see when they come out of the bye. There won't be dramatic changes. You can't change. Look, they've been doing this since OTA started, which were what, Buck, back in, was it March or April, give or take?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. They're not going to all of a sudden have dramatic changes because you can't do that. The coaches can't handle that and the players can't handle that. So, you're working on tweaks. You're working on getting better with execution. You're trying to clean up some of the mistakes, both individually and unit-wise. That's what you're trying to do. And you hope you come out with kind of a Christmas to the way in which you play, and that some of the mistakes are, alleviated and taken care of. You don't know that till they play. But, I'm not one who's going to sit here and say, oh, my God, Will Levis, he's made some mistakes. You got to get him out of there. That's just silly talk.
And I think that's exactly how the coaching staff thinks. I think a lot of fans, at least looking at this upcoming game against the Colts, would say, all right, because he's got a sprained AC joint, Greg. We haven't talked since he was officially diagnosed.
Is he going to play, or is that not known yet?
Well, not known yet. I'm going to head out to practice today and see if he even throws, because I know he didn't throw during the bye.
Right. And he may not play, but the point is, no matter what happens Sunday, even if they win with Mason Rudolph, to me, I don't even think there's any question of a quarterback controversy. Will Levis must play when healthy, and he must be given an opportunity to play enough games and get enough reps to see what he is as an NFL quarterback. Having said that, as I think I've said to you before, that doesn't mean I think he's going to be a top 5 quarterback in the league. We don't know what he's going to be, but you have to give him the opportunity to find that out and to work through, his what he's going through. Hey, just think of this. The interception he threw in the last game to Emmanuel Ogbah, I believe it was it not?
Mm-hmm.
I believe there's a quarterback named Aaron Rodgers, who will be a first ballot Hall of Famer, who threw the same interception to Andrew Van Ginkel this past week. So these things do happen. Sometimes the defense wins. Sometimes the defense fools even the smartest, most experienced quarterbacks in the league. These things do happen. So, it's all a learning curve for Levis at this point. I would imagine that, I don't want to say he's a difficult kind of coach, because I don't want people to think Levis is a concern as an individual. But when someone is by nature so aggressive in their approach to the game, you have to channel that, and that can take time, because the only way that can truly be channeled is by playing the game. It's not going to help him channel it by sitting on the side with a clipboard, or I guess with an iPad these days. But, he has to play, and he has to figure that out through experience. When can I do something? When should I not do something? Hey, in this situation, you know what? I can't take a sack no matter what. Even if I drop back and clearly I don't get a clear picture and no one's open. Hey, I can't take a sack in this situation. Hey, I have to check it down in this situation. I can't try to push it down the field. The only way to learn all those things, which are game management things, and that's not a negative term by any means, Buck, the game management element of quarterbacking is to play in those situations.
Yeah, I mean, people would love for him to be a game manager here based on how this situation has gone. And there have been times when he's managed the situation, which makes those kind of maniac moments that he has or has had all the more frustrating, because you do see him making some progress. You do see him kind of taking to some of the concepts that they've been trying to get through to them as an offense over the course of the last couple months. With that, Greg, Gus Bradley's defense, they are hemorrhaging yards right now. He has always played a certain style. If you could walk the audience through what that style is, just as a refresher.
Well, some might remember back, he was the original Legion of Boom coordinator with Seattle when he played almost all cover 3, because he had such good personnel that he didn't really have to change much. But Gus Bradley is a believer in playing, not doing a ton of things. In other words, doing a few things over and over and over so your players do them at a really high level. That's his belief as a defensive coach. So you're not necessarily going to get a lot of different looks, a lot of different pressures. You're going to get what you see on tape, and that's what you're going to get, because he wants his players to play fast. Now, they're not going to have DeForest Buckner. He's still out with a sprained ankle. I think they're talking week 7 at the earliest, so he won't play this week. They've got a rookie who's playing at a really high level, Latu, who was the 15th pick in the draft, who was my number 1 edge player coming out, and he's played like that through the first early part of this season. They've got a linebacker, and I'm not speaking Zaire Franklin. I'm speaking E.J. Speed, who's playing at a really, really high level. Their concern is at the corner position. And again, you hope you can take advantage of it. As you said, we don't know who the quarterback will be this week for Tennessee.
Or either side.
Hope you can, yeah, correct. But you hope you could take advantage of the fact that Jones is the right corner. He was a late round pick. And for the most part, he's played solid football. He's a big kid. He's a little stiff. He's not a great athlete for the position, but he plays every snap. On the left side, they've kind of been rotating 2 guys, Womack and Flowers. Last week, Womack played the large majority of the snaps. Flowers actually made a mistake on the Brian Thomas 70-some-odd yard touchdown. So maybe that was one reason he ended up not playing as many snaps. But they've sort of been in rotation at left corner. I think they've got a solid safety position in Blackman and Cross. Cross, I think, can become a very good player out of Maryland in his 2nd or 3rd year, I forget. But I think he can become a good player. They're a solid defense. They do what they do. But they're not a great defense. The personnel's not good enough to be a great defense. But normally, there's no mystery to what Gus Bradley does, normally.
I want to stick with defense, but flip it to the Titans, Greg, because that statistically and counting stats mean whatever they mean, depending on the context. They are the number one defense in terms of total defense. The offenses that they've faced have been suboptimal at best through these first 4 games.
Playing the Dolphins helps with those stats early in the season.
I mean, just brutal. But with how sustainable? What do you see from the Titans defense right now, Greg? Because they're doing it without a legitimate pass rush, and that makes me feel like it's going to be tough to kind of sustain that level of play when the offenses get better here in the next couple of weeks.
Yeah. And at some point, you're going to need to be able to pressure the quarterback. And again, it's not number of sacks. I know a lot of fans just look at sack numbers. It's the ability to impact the quarterback. You have to speed up the quarterback. We'll see. I mean, Jeffrey Simmons, will he be back this week?
He said he's going to be ready for the Colts, but he's got an elbow injury, Greg, it's his UCL, and is that going to affect his ability to power and shed blocks?
Hey, you and I are not doctors. I guess we don't know the severity of it. That's the issue.
Yeah.
And again, that could be an injury he fights all year long, and you hope he doesn't snap it or whatever it is that requires surgery, because that's a major surgery. But anyway. Yeah, they haven't really shown that one player can be that dominant a pass rusher. That one player is someone that the offense has to account for in pure pass situations. You hope it'd be Landry. He's done that in the past. That's what you're hoping. But you're right. Is it sustainable? I mean, the one thing about pass rush, Buck, you can always create pass rush. The big question becomes is how much do you want to sacrifice coverage in order to create pass rush? It's a numbers game. You can always add to your pass rush. If you don't feel you can get there with 4 and you want to rush 5, you can do that. But now you're taking 1 out of your coverage, so you're sacrificing and compromising your coverage, because there's only so many coverages you can play if you have 6 in coverage versus 7 in coverage. So, Denard Wilson certainly has a background of pressure because he was with Greg Williams with the Jets as the DB coach. So Greg Williams had a large plate of pass rush concepts as any D coordinator in recent memory. So Denard Wilson certainly has those in his playbook. The question is, does he feel comfortable doing that with Brownlee, a rookie, playing at one corner spot? And I like Brownlee a lot, but he's still a rookie corner.
Of course, you can also watch Greg Cosell on the NFL Matchup Show on ESPN every Saturday before the games to get you ready. You can set your DVR. You can watch it on demand on ESPN+. Greg, the 2 undefeated teams are off this week. Both the Chiefs and the Vikings have a bye. What piece in the Matchup Show do you want people to particularly pay attention to this week?
Oh boy, let's see. Well, we're doing a piece. The piece in our B block that Darius Butler and I kind of do together will this week be on Caleb Williams, because I thought the last 2 weeks, I think the coaching staff has really done an outstanding job with him, because with a young quarterback, Buck, what you're really trying to do, and I'm not sure a lot of people think like this about young quarterbacks, is you're really trying to put him in a position where the player or players that he has to read on a given play are reduced so it's minimal. You can't ask a quarterback to have to look at 4 or 5 defenders. Even veteran quarterbacks, that's too much. So you're trying to, based on probability and tendency of what you're expecting from a defense, understand with your route concept call that, okay, he only really has to read 1 defender. Maybe take a peek at a second one just to validate something, but you don't want to put a young quarterback in a position where he has to see too much, because then you clutter his mind. He's not used to that. That's not what he had to do in college. So they did a really good job 2 weeks ago, and this week I thought in particular they did a great job with it, and he executed that at a really high level for the most part. And so we're going to deal with that in our B block. I'm actually doing a piece on Jared Goff, and obviously he was 18 for 18 in the last game. That's not going to happen every week, as we know. But the kinds of throws he makes from the pocket, window throws, which are really difficult throws in the NFL, inside the numbers, between defenders, of course, I'm talking zone coverage, he's as good as there is in the league at making those kinds of throws, and those are really difficult throws.
Titans have the Lions coming up in a couple of weeks. That's going to be in Detroit, which I've never done Ford Field. It's one of like the 6 stadiums I have left, Greg, and it feels like every game sounds like the Super Bowl in there right now.
Well, and there was a Super Bowl there, and I was there, and I'm trying to remember which Super Bowl it was. I think it's been open for quite a while, right?
Jackson just said in my ear, Steelers Seahawks, maybe?
Yes, yes. That was so 2004, 2005-ish, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah,
Might have been the Rolling Stones, the halftime show, if memory serves me correctly.
pretty good.
Maybe Jackson could look that up.
What's the Jackson, if you would? What's the best halftime show you've seen? Because you've gone to a fair amount of Super Bowls, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, of course, being an old guy, Buck, I'm, more of a classic rocker, so those days are gone for halftime shows. But back in the day, those you had, the Stones, you had bands like that. So, those were the ones I remember more than the recent ones because, not that I don't like the music, but it's not the music I grew up with. The music you grow up with, that resonates with you more than more recent music that you hear, even if you like it. It's just the stuff when you're 13, 14, 15 stays with you a lot more because that's kind of it's what you grew up with.
Absolutely. Sources do confirm in my ear that it was in fact the Rolling Stones.
That's it. Can't believe I remember that. It was the Stones. Yeah, yeah.
That'd be a tough one to forget. That's a pretty memorable experience.
It's the Stones. I actually saw the Stones in Philly in 1980, a stadium show here in Philly. It was Journey, George Thorogood and the Destroyers, and the Stones.
I'm trying to imagine what you would be like at that concert, and I'm enjoying the mental image that we got to go to a show together next time you're in town. Maybe when we do the install live.
I've seen a few concerts in my day like that, Buck,
I would say so. Greg Cosell of NFL Films hanging out there with us on 104.5 The Zone. Follow him at Greg Cosell on Twitter, the NFL Matchup Show on ESPN. Buddy, thanks for stopping by. I appreciate it.
All right, Buck, thanks. Appreciate it. Have a great one.
That is the main man, Greg Cosell. Of course, Greg and I do the podcast, The Install, each and every Thursday in your podcast feeds, typically, exclusively on 104.5 The Zone's YouTube channel. But today, since I'm guest booking, I cheated. I said, Greg, can you do the radio show and we'll just make it the podcast afterwards? I'm gonna get some heat for that. Lucas handles all the guest booking, unless it's somebody. I mean, I don't know. Unless it's a Titans player or like somebody bigger that he doesn't have access to, like Lucas does most of the guest booking. I got a better phone book than Lucas does. What am I? Is that a fine?
You didn't have to sound like such an ass when you said it,
buddy. That's my voice. You think I don't know? Every once in a while, Jackson, I look in the mirror and I see what you see. It grosses me out sometimes, but it's not going to stop me. 615-737-1045 is the number if you want to jump in. Coming up next, are you gonna do the SEC observations? You got the music? We're gonna do the thing?
We will talk about SEC next.
It's next. We're really going to be talking about Kalen DeBoer today, huh?
Yeah, let's talk about streaks snapped or continued this weekend. We'll start with the Vanderbilt-Alabama game. What do you think Vandy's record over top 5 opponents was coming into this weekend?
0-60. Thank you for listening to the show for the first 2 days.
Good guess.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that was just part of the list. I had to list
throw
it.
you off with the first one?
Yeah, you kind of threw me off. What was Alabama's record against as number 1 versus unranked teams?
Undefeated.
Nope, they were 64-3. AP number 1 team scoring 35-plus points were what coming into this weekend?
Okay, we're going to get lost in this. Just give me the numbers.
364-2.
Ooh.
So all these streaks ended this weekend as Vanderbilt beat Alabama, but some streaks continued as Tennessee has not won in Fayetteville, Arkansas since 2001.
Wait, what?
Yeah.
That's real?
That's real.
You told me that Tennessee-Arkansas games were cursed for some reason, and I didn't understand your meaning. I guess I hadn't realized because it's not like they play every year or have played every year. I know divisions have gone away, but still.
In my lifetime.
2001?
In my lifetime, Tennessee and Arkansas have played a total of 10 times. Tennessee is 4-6 in those games, and they are 1-5 at Fayetteville, Arkansas, with their lone win coming in 2001.
What is it about Arkansas? Arkansas hasn't even been good.
You know the last time they beat the Razorbacks at all, even in Knoxville?
When?
2007.
What the hell is that?
Yeah, it's cursed.
I had no idea. Were you aware of that going into this particular game?
Did not. Needed a SEC observation, and I found a doozy.
Goodness. Okay. Well, let's start with Vandy. Because the thing that makes the Vanderbilt stuff so impressive, do you know what Vandy's record was last year?
3-9?
2-10. They were 0-8 in the SEC, and now they turn around and beat Alabama. It's not heard of. So what, have you seen the Lane Kiffin press conference?
Where he's just stopping and being, this is once in a lifetime right here.
Somebody asks him about like the health of his football team, and you can see it. He's at a podium. He's in some small media room. He's staring. He's squinting at something in the back of the room. There's a TV on. And it's got the Alabama Vanderbilt game on, and he's not paying attention to the question. And he's squinting and he's saying, "How many timeouts does Alabama have left?" And the reporters tell him how many timeouts Alabama has left at that point in the game. And he says in response to the question about his team's health, "Hey, do you guys want to turn around and watch this here? This is like a once in a lifetime type of thing."
You want to hear something crazy?
What you got?
Alabama was Clark Lee's 3rd career SEC win as Vanderbilt's head coach. He was hired in 2021.
You couldn't write something as improbable as what it was that Vandy did, just based on the history of Vanderbilt. Now, if you've actually paid attention to Vanderbilt, and listen, I'm not going to act like I've watched a bunch of Vandy games this year. You go back and watch the highlights afterwards, coming in on a. I mean, usually for me it's a Tuesday because we typically don't talk about college football after a Titans game on a Monday. But just going back and watching some of these games and seeing the way that they're beating teams and seeing the way that they've given away opportunities to. I mean, there's a world where Vanderbilt's undefeated this year. It's so impressive to see what Clark Lee has done. Now, for the Tennessee streak against Arkansas, I don't know what to tell you other than to attribute that to a curse. Like that spans generations, that spans multiple different coaching staffs on both sides and varying levels of competitiveness. I don't know how to cure your Arkansas problem.
We'll try again next time.
Is it the curse of Traylon Burks? Is he a representative of that for the state of Tennessee? The futility faced by Tennessee against Arkansas?
Titans did play Traylon Burks once. Or not the Titans, the Vols. My fault.
You were doing so well. 615-737-1045 is the number if you want to join the conversation. Don't forget Chris Doring of the SEC Network, the former Florida wide receiver, will talk with us about this upcoming game for Tennessee A must-win if ever you saw one, given the loss that this Vols team suffered at Arkansas and what is still ahead on the schedule that both includes home for Florida, home for Bama, and on the road at Georgia here in the not-too-distant future. Let's go to Matt up next. Hey, Matt.
Hey, so I just had a question. With Vanderbilt looking so strong in the coaching aspect, do you think another powerhouse college would offer him a lot of money to go to a different school, since Vandy doesn't, really have the money or willing to spend the money to keep good coaches? And I'll hang up and listen.
Isn't that an interesting question? Because it's his alma mater. Like, Clark Lee played at Vanderbilt. That place means a lot to him. He went down to SEC Media Days a couple years ago and said that he wanted to make Vanderbilt into a national championship contender and was openly laughed at. And yeah, I mean, understandably so, like, respectfully to Clark, like, that's hilarious. Like, the idea that Vanderbilt would be a national championship contender. What I'd say is it's not improbable. I would think that people would want to see a larger sample size, a legitimate, if you're talking about legitimate programs that would potentially hire him away, because I definitely think people are looking at Clark Lee. I mean, aren't you looking at Clark Lee differently than you did not that long ago? I mean, there's as much credit due to the quarterback and to Jerry Kill, who both come over from, was it New Mexico State?
Yeah, but I mean, Clark Lee went and got those guys.
Oh, sure.
And built a system to put them in the best position to succeed.
But it's the same system. I mean, Jerry Kill brought the same system over with the same quarterback, so there's continuity there. All I'm saying is you don't get these results without everybody involved. It's not just a Clark Lee thing. So whether programs who might be interested in hiring him or seeing a better look at him would take that into consideration, they have to show a sustainable sample size. Clark Lee has to show that he can build a program, and what better place to do it than out there on West End at his alma mater. So I wouldn't think that something like that would happen for, I would say, at least another season, right? You want to see a representative sample size of who this person is and how he can continue to build upon success there. But it's good to have expectations, right? Isn't that what Brian Callahan said about the Titans? You have to earn the right to have expectations. Look at Vanderbilt out here earning it. Congratulations to them. 615-737-1045 is the number if you want to join the conversation. Also, the F&M Bank chat, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Twitch. Jackson, we have the dumbest thing in sports this week coming up next.
Yes, we do.
615-737-1045 is the number if you want to call us and tell us what the dumbest thing in sports this week is. I'm Buck Rising. It's 1045 The Zone. QC Kinetics will get you up and moving again if you've been dealing with that nagging joint pain. You know how awful that can be, and you don't have to keep living life with that joint pain. Relief is possible. Real lasting relief with help from QC Kinetics. People here in Middle Tennessee are getting their lives back, getting their mobility back thanks to QC. They are the nation's leader in cellular therapies that can revitalize your joints. I'm talking about advanced regenerative medicine using your own body's healing properties, highly concentrated and carefully placed in your achy joint. Back, shoulder, or knee pain, these are cutting-edge treatments that require no surgery, no drugs, and no downtime. It's a quick in-office procedure that can get you moving again. These protocols have been developed by medical professionals and under the leadership of Dr. Mitchell Scheinkup, a former orthopedic surgeon and a pioneer in clinical regenerative medicine. If arthritic joint pain is keeping you from doing the things you love, whether it's pain in your knees, hips, back, or shoulder, you owe it to yourself to learn more. So call QC Kinetics in Murfreesboro today. 615-249-4024. That's 615-249-4024.
It is 11:03. Good morning from the 104.5 The Zone Studios. I'm Jackson Williams. In NFL news, the Texans play star wide receiver Nico Collins on injured reserve after he suffered a hamstring injury against the Bills on Sunday. Collins currently leads the NFL in receiving yards with 567. In Titans news, the team announced yesterday that they released tackle John Ojukwu. Ojukwu was a 2023 UDFA out of Boise State, played in 4 games for the Titans over the past 2 seasons, starting 3 of those. In other NFL news, the New England Patriots have made a QB change as they will turn to the 3rd overall pick in the 2024 draft, Drake May, this week as they take on the Houston Texans. For our foundation repair and waterproofing needs, you need to visit USSTN.com. Breaking news at once on your own. The Titans and Vols. This is 104.5 The Zone.
It sure is. 615-737-1045 is the number. You call us, you tell us what the dumbest thing in sports this week is. May I present to the audience the New York Jets. We talked about this yesterday. It happened right before the show. They are the nominee for the dumbest thing in sports this year. You cannot find as bad. Well, you can find as badly run an organization as the New York Jets. But now that Dan Snyder's out of the league, now that they finally got the worst owner in football, in professional sports, out by a mile, like, who's public enemy number 1 as far as ownership goes? Jim Irsay is an easy target. But, like, I don't think of Irsay as being outright, well, he did the Jeff Saturday thing. I can't argue competency after he just hired one of his buddies off TV to come in and coach one of the worst Colts teams I've ever seen in my life. But, like, Woody Johnson probably going to get some heat as one of the worst owners in football for all the nonsense that they continue to do. So this is what Connor Hughes. Now, full disclosure, there's a bunch of conflicting reports coming out of New York yesterday. So you take this with a slight grain of salt, even though I know Connor Hughes of SNY to be a hugely credible Jets reporter. Sources: former Jets head coach Robert Saleh was never going to fire offensive coordinator Nathaniel Hackett. That was not happening. However, he was going to demote his game day responsibilities this week. Saleh made the decision to give play calling to Titans legend Todd Downing because of the continued issues on offense. How down bad? How down tremendous do you have to be to look around your coaching staff, to look at Nathaniel Hackett, Aaron Rodgers' guy, and look over at Todd Downing and say, you know what's going to fix my problems?
You're up, bud.
That guy. Come on down. Respectfully. I mean, come on. Because of the continued issues on offense. Again, this is at Connor_J_Hughes on Twitter. Based off of Jeff Ulbricht's press conference, I add parenthetically, interim Jets coach, it sounds very much like he too is considering giving play calling to Downing. The Jets expressed concern with Hackett this offseason in their attempts to add former Titans legend Arthur Smith as a senior advisor. He would have been the lead offensive voice. However, he took the Steelers' offensive coordinator job instead. This is why the Jets are godforsaken. Which coach is going to look at them in the offseason with options? Like, I don't know what Vrabel's market is going to be. The vast majority of people were loud wrong on how quickly he was going to get picked up or not get picked up through the coaching cycle. But I'm going to assume that Mike Vrabel is going to have some options. I'm going to assume that Bill Belichick is going to have some options of where he might like to coach. Now, could we be loud wrong about that again? Probably. But I'd be curious to see how this next hiring cycle goes. What coach is going to look at the Jets if you have options and say, yeah, I'll sign up for that nonsense? Of course not. The Jets are the dumbest thing in sports this week. What you got?
I'm going with Jordan Love's interception from Sunday. Did you see this one?
No.
He was falling out of the back of the end zone and just threw a prayer up to VFL, Jalen McCullough, and it was a pick six.
He levised?
Oh, he levised hard.
Oh.
It honestly might be called a love now. It was bad.
Oh, really?
It was horrific.
Wait, this was to, what was the game?
It was.
Who did Green Bay play? Oh, Green Bay played the Rams. Green Bay played the Rams, right, because that game came down to the wire, as a matter of fact. So Jordan Love now jockeying for what that terminology or what term is going to be when a quarterback makes a mind-melting interception decision. I mean, Love in the end zone.
Only thing he didn't do was the surrender cobra.
It's why people keep taking pictures and videos of Will Levis. He is very, very expressive. The surrender cobra after the interception is, it is something akin to sports art. Anyway, 615-737-1045 is the number. What is the dumbest thing in sports this week? You give us some submissions. We would be happy to take them. Let's start this morning with Bob.
Yes, my dumbest thing in sports is the stupid names of some sports arenas. Now, I was seeing in the Seattle Kraken, they got an assistant coach for goaltenders that's a woman, and it showed her behind the bench at the Climate Pledge Arena. That's one of the most stupid names I've heard.
Okay, thank you for the call, Bob.
Bob was passionate.
I mean, I understand. Climate Pledge Arena. What was the? I don't know what the Kraken's arena name was before Climate Pledge, or how long that's been like the naming rights spot. Naming rights have ruined arenas and stadiums, right? Like Nissan Stadium is solid on a scale of like what is Heinz Field now called? Acrisure. Yeah, that doesn't really. It doesn't hit the same, right? God forbid if they ever try to corporatize Lambeau or something like that. Tennessee, Danny White did a masterful job tiptoeing around that, taking the Pilot Flying J money without it being Pilot Flying J Stadium at like Neyland Field or something ridiculous. That happened to Indiana. It's just the name of a family that gave them like $25 million to renovate Assembly Hall. So it does tend to ruin those things, but I'm unfamiliar with Climate Pledge Arena. Let's go to Jason up next. Jackson, fade him up.
And I will go with honorable mention this week with the Tennessee Titans front office and management. Look at who's NFL rushing leader, Derrick Henry. How did we let this guy get out of here? Would have made a huge difference. Had a career game 2 weeks ago and then ran all over, I think it was Cincinnati on Sunday.
Jason, give me your first place one again. I didn't hear it.
It was you, Buck. It was you. I would give you first place, but I'll go honorable mention myself.
Wait, is there a reason? Okay, good talk. You didn't catch that one, did you?
No, what'd he say?
He said, I couldn't hear him because you had him faded down initially, so I got his honorable mention as the Titans and as an organization for letting Derrick Henry walk because he is leading the league in rushing again and is experiencing one of his best seasons and will probably have one of his best seasons in a Baltimore Ravens uniform. He said his first submission was me, and I asked, is there a reason? And he just laughed. I think that's as hurtful as anything he could have said.
Your toes did go viral.
What?
Your toes went viral.
What do you mean my toes went viral?
You posted that picture from the beach. A lot of people were making fun of your toes.
It's like, well, no, they were making fun of the size of my feet.
The length, yeah, like how long your toes were, bud.
Well, not toes. That's a foot. Like, how big is the average human being's foot? Like, I've got size 13 feet. Do you just have a bunch of small boys out here with like baby feet?
I don't know. I wasn't the one making fun of you.
There were some pretty funny ones.
You were getting cooked, though.
Somebody called me Flipper. 615-737-1045. All right, let's see. We've got Chip next.
Hey, you hear me?
Mm-hmm.
All right. Dumbest thing in sports this week. If you remember back in 2022 when Tennessee beat Alabama, Tennessee fans rushed the field. I believe it was Jermaine Burton that laid that female student out as she was coming onto the field.
Yeah.
He got drugged through all of the Tennessee fan base. Well, this past week, Arkansas rushes the field. Damn if a Tennessee player doesn't turn around and do the same thing to a student running on the field. That, my friend, is the dumbest thing in sports.
Did you see that this weekend, Jackson?
I did. Unfortunate.
Yeah. Unacceptable. No.
Yeah, that's the better word.
Yeah, no, unacceptable. Absolutely unacceptable. It's not as you don't want to do those things by degrees. It's that's why the field storming is $100,000 fine, right? Like Vandy is selling off pieces of the goalpost to pay for the $100,000 fine. You're trying to keep people. You're trying to keep situations like that from happening in highly tense moments. Again, it's absolutely not to excuse the behavior. You have to have control over yourself as a human being, but that's a part of the reason why they're trying to get rid of the field storming stuff. Let's go to Tommy next.
Yeah, but you just brought it up. I think the dumbest thing in sports is for the SEC finding Vanderbilt $100,000 like they're supposed to think there's any possibility that they're going to upset Alabama. So I think that was the dumbest thing in sports.
I mean, I understand it, Tommy, but like that's the rule.
Rules
like,
are rules.
That's some rules are dumb. But I mean, the example of the Tennessee Arkansas thing is you're trying to keep students and athletes safe, potentially from one another in those kind of situations. Have you ever been a part of a court storming or a field storming?
Nope, I left Tennessee right before they beat Alabama. Come work with you, buddy. That's a real prize.
Woo! You're getting more and more bitter by the day. More and more bitter. What's
You're
wrong
rubbing
with
off
you?
on
Well,
me.
I don't know. It's what happened. I'm not bitter. I'm the happiest one on this show. It's the other two of you being around me that has made you bit. So I understand that. It happens. I was only once. It was Indiana, unranked Indiana basketball over Anthony Davis, number one Kentucky basketball team at the time. Buzzer beater shot. Court gets stormed. Dick Vitale, it's unbelievable, baby. The whole thing, right? So, very unsafe. The whole thing. Rules there for a reason. Largely public safety, even though you want to give people the opportunity to celebrate a really cool achievement. All right. Coming up next, we are going to dive into Tennessee's path to the college football playoff. We can also take more of your phone calls on these things. Chris Doring of the SEC Network is coming up. So is Brian Callahan, Titans head coach. You'll hear from that press conference live in the noon hour. I'm Buck Rising. It's 104.5 The Zone. Unlock your engine's maximum performance with Castrol Edge Full Synthetic. It protects for 20,000 miles between oil changes and 3 times stronger than the leading full synthetic motor oil. For a limited time, you can get 5 quarts of Castrol Edge at O'Reilly Auto Parts and receive 3 times O Rewards points plus a $15 O'Reilly gift card after rebate. O'Reilly Auto Parts is celebrating the 25th anniversary of their famous jingle, and they want you to be a part of the celebration. We all know how the jingle goes. It's one of the most catchy jingles out there, and they want you to submit a cover of the jingle, a remix of your own choreographed dance, for the opportunity for you to win exclusive merch and prizes, including 3 $5,000 grand prize winners from O'Reilly Auto Parts. Submit your video to O'ReillyJingleContest.com now through October 31st. Terms and conditions apply. No purchase necessary. Welcome back to the show. We are fueled by Hattie B's Hot Chicken. 615-737-1045 is the number. We got a few more phone calls to take on the dumbest thing in sports this week. We'll get to those here in just a second. We're going to talk about the loss to Arkansas in particular, though, how it impacts the Vols' path to try and still make the college football playoff with some really, really challenging opponents still yet ahead. We'll get back to Titan stuff here in just a little bit. Brian Callahan's press conference is going to be at 12:20 today. Preds are also opening their season tomorrow. Home opener at Bridgestone Arena.
Against
the Dallas Stars. I'm thinking about going.
You should.
Should I?
Yeah.
Are you sure?
I'd like a win to start this new era of Preds hockey.
Famously, when I go to games, they lose. It's been since the February before COVID, where I attended a Preds game in person and they won.
I thought you went this past year and they won a game.
I don't think
During the winning streak.
Are you sure? Oh, no. I think we went at the end of the winning streak and they lost in overtime, if I remember correctly.
I thought you left early because they were losing and they came back and won.
It's possible. I have to refresh my memory. I don't remember. It wasn't that memorable a win because I remember the last one I saw was a crazy win. It was after I lost that bet to David Reed of the Midday 180. I had to shave my head over that Tennessee-Indiana Gator Bowl loss. Just pathetic. Couldn't cover an onside kick. Still bitter about it. Either way, I'll have to go and review my notes about the Preds. But thinking about going tomorrow. Should be a good time. You want to talk about a team with huge expectations? Preds, man. Also big spenders in the offseason. Also have had a bit of a honeymoon phase with everything going on. They have legitimate expectations. It's going to be interesting to see. One of these damn teams better live up to expectation. Titans have stumbled early. We'll see what happens. Vols also squandering a 5-0 start and a 2-game winning streak to start their SEC play before losing to Arkansas here in just a second. I just need one of these teams, just one, Jackson, to live up to a reasonable amount of expectation. 615-737-1045, the number. Let's go to Eric up next.
Hey, Buck, what's going on? It's been about 7 or 8 months, I think, since the last time I talked to you.
Hey, buddy.
Hey, my dumbest thing in sports has got to be the whole mess going on in Cleveland with the Cleveland Browns and Deshaun Watson. Of course, he settled another lawsuit within, I believe, the last week to 10 days. I think Kevin Stefanski wants to bench him, but the owner, Jim Haslett, said, no, got to play because he got to justify that contract and justify what they gave up to get him. They're stuck in their contract for several years because if they cut him next year, I believe they would owe him something like it would take like a $72 million cap hit. This by far is the worst trade in NFL history, guys. So that's my dumbest thing in sports, the Cleveland Browns and the whole mess with Deshaun Watson.
Thank you for the call. It's good to hear from you, Eric. Thanks for chiming back in. I wonder if we did something to bother him that he left us for 6 or 7 months.
Most likely. I blame you.
That's a safe bet. We talked about this yesterday. I mean, reckless speculation, please, at your convenience. Yeah, Jimmy Haslam's making them continue to start Deshaun Watson. I don't know this to be fact. I don't have any sources. Nothing to the effect. Jimmy Haslam's making them start Deshaun Watson. They would owe him north of $100 million if they cut him. He has cap hits the next 2 seasons of north of $72 million. We talked about this yesterday. It's disgusting. I mean, you know how I feel about this. I personally am happy to see Jimmy Haslam fail and Deshaun Watson fail. Is it becoming the worst transaction in the history of football?
Yes. Especially with how good the Texans have gotten.
That's what I'm saying. Like
with the assets they got.
The way that the Texans flipped that, and it's highway robbery. Now, of course, nobody foresaw how catastrophic he would be on the field after the catastrophic off the field stuff, which, by the way, has continued into just as recently as last month. And lucky for him, he's got all kinds of money to continue to settle these things as they pop up. But, the Cleveland Browns. Tough scene. Luke, and that'll be the last dumbest thing in sports before we pivot to some balls talk. Hey, Luke. Fade him up, Jackson.
Dumbest thing in sports, you mentioned Clark Lee losing to 3 SEC teams. That was against Will Levis, Anthony Richardson, and now Jalen Milroe. So it's a perfect week for it. If you go back historically at the number of noteworthy NFL quarterbacks that have lost to Vandy in their college career, it's a very small list. I'm very unsure if those three, if any of them will be successful as well. But thought I'd point that out on a Titans-Colts week as well. Thanks, guys.
Thanks for the call. That's interesting.
Should that hurt your draft stock? Should it be like small hands, like with Kenny Pickett, or whatever other draft measurements at the combine? Oh, he lost to Vanderbilt. That's got to knock him down a couple rounds.
Luke is alleging that it should. Every time they do the hand measurement at the combine, it just makes me think of, you remember those Whopper Burger King commercials where you're talking about people who are self-conscious about holding a Whopper because they just have these tiny hands. That's what Kenny Pickett makes me think of. I mean, I would argue that Levis and Richardson's loss to Vanderbilt were way worse than Alabama's loss to Vanderbilt, because Jalen Milroe, I mean, he was good enough in that game. I mean, he wasn't good enough to win, right? He had the turnovers, and you question the pick six that he had, but like the offense was not the problem for Alabama. It's the defense getting pushed around by Vandy. And Vandy, by the way, is not the same program as it was in the last 2 years. It's not the same kind of players. These dudes are legitimate dogs. They're out there with more swagger than I've seen a Vanderbilt team have, I mean, since James Franklin was here. All right, the Vols. Let's pivot. So I mentioned Tennessee losing to Arkansas. Jackson brought up it's a cursed. Is it a rivalry? It doesn't sound like much of a rivalry.
I mean, there's big games. Like you think about the 1998 season, the fumble by the quarterback when Arkansas probably should have won that game, keeps Tennessee undefeated. They end up winning the national championship. A huge turning point in that season was the Arkansas game. So they had a 2-game winning streak to start conference play. They lose to Arkansas. They drop to 4-1. And looking at what they have had at the start of the season and how much things have changed as far as their inability to produce on offense, it's a legitimate concern. Now, the path to the college football playoff is what's at stake here, right? You're looking at Tennessee. The defense is still championship caliber. The run game is still championship caliber. The question is the quarterback and, frankly, the coach. Now, Heupel had that line to the team after the game, after the loss about, there will be narratives that people create. You have to, your challenge is to look at your teammates and challenge each other to be better and all these other things. But it's not quite as simple as that. Jonathan Crompton, former Vols quarterback, laid this out really well. This was on the show on Monday, talking about the dynamic that he's observing as a former quarterback between Nico and Josh Heupel.
You don't see the level of explosiveness. You don't see listen, guys, I've said it for 4 years. Our offense is feast or famine. All right. There's not a level of creativity, trick plays, reverses, double pass, kind of in-game adjustment stuff. That's not going to happen. All right. What we do have is consistency of how the plays are ran. As far as everything we run in the pass game is option routes, right? There are some full field progressions, but still the routes are option routes. That makes it very hard from a quarterback perspective, especially a young quarterback. It's not really like Iowa was a good team, but it's a bowl game. A lot of people sitting out, blah, blah, blah. Iowa's offense also, there's a reason why they put a clause in the guy's contract that if they don't score points, he was fired. You kick a field goal, you pretty much beat Iowa. All right. Then you go into this year. Well, it's all been cupcakes, including NC State, up until Oklahoma and Arkansas. So the level of trust, I don't think, has been earned yet because the opponents haven't been there. You know what I'm saying? So I don't. It's not a lack of talent, but you can tell. There's the clip after Oklahoma where Heupel is talking to Nico after the game and says, "Hey, I pulled back. I scaled back in the second half. Our defense was playing well, blah, blah, blah." Well, what, to me, I don't care who you're playing. It could, especially I'd be playing against my damn dad. I'm not backing off. I'm not trying to say you're trying to score 70 and run up the score, but when it's still a semi-close game, you don't back off. So that shows the level of, I'm not going to say that he's not trusting him, but I don't know if he full-blown has the confidence in him in the system yet.
That's Jonathan Crompton. You can hear the whole interview via the podcast, or you can check it out on 104.5 The Zone's YouTube channel. Former Vols quarterback breaking down what he's seeing from the Tennessee offense right now. There's a lot of that's concerning, because as I see some comments on the FNM Bank chat, you can interact, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Twitch. You can call in to chime in, because this Florida game is must win. And we'll talk about that with Chris Doring. Billy Napier's looking at this game as an opportunity to save his job. If he goes to Tennessee and beats Tennessee, Billy Napier just bought himself more runway. I know they beat UCF, but they looked a lot. I mean, they looked good against UCF, better than they looked all year long. Somebody on the YouTube chat, or on the FNM Bank chat, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Twitch, Brandon Rushing writes, "It's not the loss that worries me." Not the loss to Arkansas, he means. "It's how we are trending on offense. The offensive tackles were horrible. Nico has trouble reading the field against good competition. Heupel seems like he doesn't trust Nico yet." All of those things, I think, are apt. The protection is not good enough. It hasn't been.
14 points won't ever win you an SEC game.
You've got a quarterback who is inexperienced behind a line that is not protecting him well. He has some faults of his own, because he's clearly looking to push the ball deep at every opportunity. I mean, did you feel like there was stuff open underneath and at the intermediate passing game for him to take? And maybe even if just for a split second. And again, I don't know his progressions. I know that Crompton is calling the offense predictable. Mike Felder, who you'll hear from here in just a second, is calling the offense predictable. So I'm not qualified to make that assessment. All I know is I'm seeing stagnation, and I'm seeing opportunity. I think I'm seeing opportunities within the offense. If he'll just check it down, just take a 5 to 6 yard completion.
Yeah, I feel like we haven't seen Dylan Sampson catch many passes, where I feel like he's a pretty good pass catcher out of the backfield.
So I don't know. Again, there are equal parts of blame here to distribute as to why this thing has stalled out after averaging north of 63 points per game against what Crompton called cupcakes. And he's right. Kent State, Chat, and NC State do not look like quality competition, weren't quality competition in real time. Certainly look worse after the fact. I'm curious to know, ultimately, I mean, the onus is ultimately on the coaching staff, right? They've got to get through to Nico, that he's got to find ways to be less feast or famine, to take whatever the defense is presenting. And also, just like we brought up with Callahan and Levis, you hope that they've used the bye to kind of reevaluate some of the stuff that they're trying versus some of the stuff they know they do well and can do consistently and can win with consistently before they try to further expand the playbook. You can ease the degree of difficulty on the quarterback if you're willing to make adjustments rather than, I don't want to call it actively hamstringing him, but they do feel so in need of controlling Nico's opportunity for variance that it's constipating everything. That's not what this offense should be, and that burden has to be owned and realized by the coaching staff if legitimate adjustments, are going to be made here, and how you have tactical advantages moving into the toughest part of your season. Because now, I mean, Florida at home, Alabama at home, I'm going to go ahead and pencil them in for a loss at Georgia. I just think the degree of based on what I'm seeing right now from Nico on the road at Georgia against Kirby Smart and that defense, that doesn't feel like a successful. That won't be a favorable matchup. They certainly won't be. I can't imagine they'd be favored in that game, depending on what they look like here in the few weeks before that Georgia road trip, because they do have, what is it, 4 straight at home? Is that right?
I believe so. They're home for the rest of this month.
That's crazy. huge opportunity to take advantage of that before you have to go play a challenging opponent on the road like Georgia. Because they're still college kids at the end of the day. Like, college kids and consistency don't necessarily go arm in arm. So home games, winnable games, Alabama at home, more vulnerable, it feels like to me, than Georgia on the road. You have to be able to capitalize on this. And to Jackson's point, you are not winning anything scoring 14 points in an SEC football game. Another thing to keep an eye on here is, and I don't know whether Josh Heupel's been asked about this or not. I need to go back and watch the press conferences here after Titans practice today. But Mike Felder brought this up on the radio show yesterday. The idea of coach to player communication now being in the helmets in college football, and how there is an adjustment as to how you manage the situation as to what also could be contributing to why they're stalling out, and why it might be a lot for Nico to have to take in real time based on the offense that they coach. This was Mike Felder yesterday.
And I do think this, and I've talked about this on College Sports Now, I think the comms are messing with people. Now, you've done TV, I've done TV. You also do radio, I do radio. To have someone in your ear while you're still trying to like direct traffic and be yourself is hard. Imagine if you were 18, 19 trying to do that, it's even harder. And I think those, like, I really think if I'm Tennessee and I'm coming into, if I'm Tennessee and I know what I got on my plate coming up, right? Like, what do they have? They got Florida, Bama, they got Kentucky. A Kentucky team, boy, salty.
Yeah.
They are salty. I want signals. Let's get back to signals. Let's spend some time to get back to signals, because we can't wait until, and Arkansas did this. We saw Georgia do it. We've seen many teams are doing this now, where once that 15 seconds hit on the play clock, we watch the defense move. And then all of a sudden, let's say we have a young quarterback like Nico Iamaleava. Well, they weren't where they were when you were talking to me. So what do I do now? I guess it's a run play. And so I think that's going to be interesting. But tip of the cap to Arkansas. They went out there and 19-14, holding them to 14 is a really good move. I just think that I think that Tennessee hasn't opened things up and expanded. And it's not because they don't trust Nico. I think it's because of control, as you mentioned, play calling. And you say play calling, I'll go further. I think it's a control thing. And I think same thing with Ryan Day in Ohio State. I think they want to control the situation to get into perfect plays. And we saw it when pre-coms, we saw it with Check with Me's. Now we're watching it happen when they think they're in a perfect play. Then the defense moves. Now the quarterback just has to do whatever they can. And that leads to mistakes or incompletions or pressures that ultimately end up turning into sacks or turn into, again, incompletions.
Get your phone calls on that coming up next on the Vols and their best path through the college football playoff. We'll also talk about the Titans' most fixable issue that this team has coming out of their Week 5 bye. I'm Buck Rising. It's 104.5 The Zone. Two Rivers Ford is the South's most trusted Ford dealer. They have been for over 4 decades for so many reasons. It's the reason why DeAndre Hopkins, Coach Dave McGinnis, Ramon Foster, Don Davenport, so many other millions of Tennesseans over the course of those 4 decades have trusted Two Rivers Ford with their business. And they have all manner of quality American-made Ford vehicles. I drive an Explorer from Two Rivers. I love my car. They also have the electric Mach-E Mustangs. They have Ford pickup trucks as well, especially if you've been thinking about a new truck for yourself or for your business. Now is the time to get to Two Rivers Ford. They are one of the largest dealerships, volume dealerships in the country, not because they're some kind of corporate dealership. They're locally owned, but they have one of the largest inventories of trucks in the Southeast, and they have the best prices around. When it comes to financing, Two Rivers has great rates like 1.9% for 36 months on the 2024 Super Duty XL and XLT. So get in touch with non-commissioned salespeople at Two Rivers Ford today. Two Rivers Ford is Ford Truck Central. All right, now you're going to have to tell me if this is breaking news, laser light show, vomit throw up sound that we play when there's breaking news worthy when it comes to the Titans. No? You're making that executive decision? You're the executive producer for the week because the executive producer has taken vacation and left the audience in the lurch. Selfishly, Lucas Panzica. You're making the executive call today?
Yep, it's my executive decision.
All right. There is news, though. Damn it.
You had to see that coming.
No, I didn't at all. I walked blindly into it. That was mean. That was cruel what you did to me there, just leading me on the entire time. Anyway. So, the Titans have promoted offensive tackle Leroy Watson to the 53, but that's not the notable news here. The notable news is that they've added Titans legend quarterback Trevor Siemian to the practice squad. Now, what does that mean, you might ask? Well, I don't know what to tell you yet. We're heading out. We're going to hear from the head coach at noon today, at 12:20 today. Chris Doring of the SEC Network is going to join us at noon. And then we'll have Brian Callahan's press conference at 12:20. Could this be something to do with Levis's shoulder? Is this just something to keep the guys of, sleight of hand up? You don't know who to prepare for, Indianapolis Colts. Could it be Mason Rudolph? Could it be Will Levis? Could it be Trevor Siemian? Who's to say? I don't know. Brian Callahan will be asked, I'm sure, at 12:20. We'll carry that press conference live for you. Now, I will go to practice today. We'll see Will throw. We will have a press conference, I'm assuming, with the quarterback. I think he talks unless he's on injured reserve. I'm pretty sure he talks one way or the other. So I would expect to hear from Will Levis today. Does he even practice fully? Is he out there to observe? What does he look like if he throws? Brian Callahan told us yesterday that he has not thrown during the bye week because the mandate for that sprained AC joint was full rest. But Trevor Siemian, who has been here before under a previous coaching staff, back on the P squad. We'll see what that means for Will Levis, if anything at all. 615-737-1045 is the number. So speaking of Brian Callahan, he was asked a question about the Titans' most fixable issue coming out of the bye week, and this is what the head coach had to say.
There's a couple of things, I think. A lot of it more is just things that I can probably do better. Certain calls and certain spots. It's really more, it's a small sample size at this point still. You'd love to have 6-7 games behind it, but through 4 games, there's definitely things that I think we can improve on, some things that I can do better to help our offense. There's a couple of schematic things that you shift around and tweak and maybe try to lean into more. Obviously not going to tell you those things at this moment, but we feel pretty good about what we learned about our team through the first month and what direction we're going to head from here. I feel pretty good about it.
So, pretty vague there on what he feels like is the most fixable issue. He brings up a couple of things, but never really dives into specifics on anything. In fact, he declines to mention specifics pretty much at all. But he does put some responsibility on himself, and that I think is completely normal. So Cosell did the first hour. We did the install on the radio show today, just for the sake of time. Given that today's practice schedule is going to be a bit hectic. And I asked Greg, from a 1,000-foot view, what is this team after you've seen 4 games of them coming out of the bye? And he said, it's a work in progress, which is exactly what you expect it to be. I feel like Titans fans were appropriately warned, don't you, about the idea of, it's a work in progress, despite how fun all of the money that you're spending, and you got a bright, shiny, new coaching staff, and it's supposed to will you into the offensive passing game future, and then the entire league pivots and run-based offenses are making a comeback, and Derrick Henry's leading the league in rushing yards again, and it doesn't give you a lot of feel-good, and you start 1-3?
I feel like they were listening in January and February when they were like, this is going to be a multi-year thing. You were talking about, everybody was talking about how this is going to be a multi-year rebuild, correct?
I feel like I did that.
Yes,
I feel
you did.
I feel like I did that.
I was here. You did. I was back here. You were over there.
Can't confirm because somebody will inevitably find something that I've said that'll come back to bite me. But I think I'm right on this one.
But I feel like in March, people stopped listening because you see Calvin Ridley, you see L'Jarius Sneed, you see Lloyd Cushenberry, you see them draft J.C. Latham, and you just think the Titans are going to be good this year.
And, especially with the offensive line, I feel like I said, yeah, it could be a good offensive line by the time we talk about this thing at the end of the year. But that doesn't mean it's going to be a good and even, competent offensive line at the start of the season because it's a lot of new. All that matters. So when Cosell says, yeah, it looks like a work in progress because it's supposed to look like a work in progress through the first month of the season, I feel like people should take him at his word on that. But also, how we're getting there is an entirely different conversation than I think a lot of us thought we'd be having. Because, what's the answer to the most fixable situation on the roster? It's that the quarterback stops with the dumb stuff. Like, just enough, be a game manager. I'm so fine with game manager. You know how exciting 30 points in a game was? To watch Mason Rudolph do that in any other, how long were some of those scoring drives? You had one for 21. You had one for 27. He had one complete. I think he had one completion over 20 yards at any given point. 9 of 17 for 85. But he did enough to score points, right? He got you in scoring position. You had 7 scoring drives in that game, and yeah, it's paper cuts and field goals, and it doesn't make you feel like you're being pulled or thrust into the offensive revolution that you thought you were going to get there, but you just don't do the thing. Just don't do the thing. And it should be theoretically as correctable as that. Now, again, I have no idea what's going on in the quarterback's head, and we'll find out how correctable that situation actually is in a divisional game, whether he even plays or not, based on the addition of a quarterback on the practice squad today. That's the news as of late. If you're just now joining us, Trevor Siemian, Titans quarterback, the Titans have added a quarterback to the practice squad and promoted an offensive tackle. They also waived yesterday John Ojukwu, who looked like he might be viable for a period of time, but they've decided that they need better depth options in case a starter goes down. So we'll get back to that here in just a second. We'll talk some college football in the meantime with Chris Doring of the SEC Network. He's next.
It is 12:01. Good afternoon from the 104.5 The Zone studios. I'm Jackson Williams. Titans making a couple of moves today as they have promoted Leroy Watson to the 53-man roster. Leroy Watson was with the team in camp and has been on the practice squad since final cuts. Trevor Siemian also signed to the Titans practice squad, a Titans practice squad veteran, and he was on the Titans practice squad back in 2020. Around the AFC South, the Texans play star wide receiver Nico Collins on IR after he suffered a hamstring injury against the Bills on Sunday. Collins was currently leading the NFL in receiving yards with 567. In other NFL news, the New England Patriots have made a quarterback change as they will turn to third overall pick of the 2024 NFL Draft, Drake May, this week as they take on the Houston Texans. For your foundation repair and waterproofing needs, visit USSTN.com. Breaking news at once on your home for the Titans and Vols. This is 104.5 The Zone.
All right, final hour is upon us. Brian Callahan's press conference going to come your way here in just a second. The Titans added a quarterback, something to keep an eye on with the status of Will Levis's shoulder in question. We'll get to your phone calls on that here in just a little bit. 615-737-1045 is the number. In the meantime, we got the main man. We got Chris Doring of the SEC Network, who's here to make us smarter. What's up, stud? How we living?
I'm doing good, man. How are you? I don't know about being smarter, but we'll chop it up for sure, man.
Yeah, the bar is low. I mean, the bar is low around here, Chris. You got to understand. Like it really doesn't take that much to exceed the level of information that we provide for 3 hours a day. No, we're good. We're good. We're just waiting for the rest of the uprights to be sifted out of the Cumberland River here down Lower Broadway. I know you've been to Lower Broad. I know you in particular, Chris, can appreciate just the level of effort that Vanderbilt students took to take that thing from West End to the depths of the Cumberland River the way that they did. That was awesome this weekend.
I had a hard enough time just walking from the stage back down Broadway to my hotel, let alone coming all the way down from West End. I wonder how many. If I was one of the hot dog vendors or the hot meat grillers, I'd have set up all along that path because I'm sure those dudes were hungry after about 3 miles of carrying the goalpost down to the river. It was awesome, though. It was even cooler that it was on our network, being there, doing the halftime show. I think people would lie to you if they told you that they thought that this was going to carry on through the end of the game. But, I think it was a cool story that everybody was tuning into. And I asked Clark Lee this. I said, honestly, I thought that there was going to be, a near miss, that some play was going to be made by Alabama or some mistake committed by Vanderbilt that was going to end up costing the Commodores, but they've changed the narrative, at least for one day. They were able to take down a top 5 team for the first time in 61 tries. No better way to do it than the number 1 team in the nation, and that number 1 team being Alabama. It'll be something I think we all remember, whether you're a Vanderbilt fan, whether you're an Alabama fan, or just a casual fan of sports in general. It was a great underdog moment.
You guys, and it was on SEC Network. Of course, you can watch Chris on the halftime, on the pregame, on the halftime, on the postgame. SEC Network on Saturdays. You and Ben, I believe it was Dari hosting with you guys this weekend, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Peter Burns does the early part, and then Dari comes in for the finish up cleanup role.
That's right. So. Watching you guys experience that in real time, watching guys like Lane Kiffin at their post-game press conference stop reporters and be like, hey, how many timeouts does Alabama have left? Up on that screen, you can see him squinting in his press conference when he's asked a question about his team's health, and he's like, hey, just hang on a second. We're never going to see something like that again in our lifetimes. And it's something that I'm not saying that anybody could see this specific result coming, Chris, but like, what Clark has pivoted to in the way that he's building that program now, and in particular the additions that they made this year, I don't know how long Jerry Kill's going to make it on West End before somebody tries to hire him away. But it was you felt like this team had a different kind of mentality, toughness, swagger, and level of execution than we've seen from Vanderbilt in years past.
I have a lot of respect for coaches that understand what their program needs to take it to the next level of success. We saw it in Fayetteville with Sam Pittman hiring Bobby Petrino, maybe not the most popular hire in a lot of people's eyes. What they did this week, Travis Williams, defensive coordinator, spotting something on tape that Oklahoma did, and Petrino or Pittman allowing him to basically completely overhaul the defense for one game in an effort to try to stop the Tennessee offense. Those are awesome moves. We talked to Clark Lee after their win over the Virginia Tech Hokies in week 1. He said he watched that Auburn New Mexico State game 8 or 9 times after that upset occurred and was just fascinated with what he saw in terms of an offense was being utilized there, the quarterback that was running it. And you mentioned it. Not only did they go out and get Diego Pavia, they got Jerry Kill, they got Tim Beck, the offensive coordinator. And what you see is an offense that provides a lot of different challenges. Certainly the misdirection is one of them. You have to have incredible eye discipline. But the option game that they run, you have to have assignment discipline. And, oh, by the way, they are physical as hell. They took it to Alabama. This was not a fluky win. This was a one team going out there and dominating every statistical category and being just as physical, if not more, than what Alabama was. You saw it early in the game, pushing the pile on some inside runs. You saw it down around the goal line. They're running power, blowing a linebacker out of the hole. You saw it on a kick-out block where an Alabama defender ended up on his back. You saw it late in the game when you're in goal line heavy formation and you're getting a push to score. Like, you needed 3 first downs at the end of the game to run the clock out. And I'm thinking, man, no way they're getting these here. And they're aggressive on the first one. They throw the ball on a rollout. Second one, they run up the middle. The third one, they get it and take a knee. Like, nothing more demoralizing for a defense and more fulfilling for an offense than to finish a game in victory formation. And that's exactly what they were able to do against, the perceived number 1 team in the country.
Oh, especially. And I like that you said perceived there, because this year, I mean, the SEC, it's beyond Texas right now. I don't know what to do with them, but it's what, like 3 weeks removed from Saban on McAfee, talking about Vanderbilt not being the only place in the SEC that's not tough to play because you outnumber their fans. And again, the fans were outnumbered and got a whole different kind of experience than they've ever had in that program.
He's right. I could speak to that as a player. I mean, it was tough going to Nashville and playing there. The early kick times that we had to play most of the time, the smaller locker rooms that you're getting dressed in, the lack of any juice there at the stadium. Again, more times than not, you got your home fans there. It's not the environment you're used to going on the road, but it could be. I don't know if they were letting Vanderbilt fans in as the game went on, but it sounded as the game went on like there was a lot more Vandy fans than there was earlier. And when you look at them in the field, there were a lot more Vandy fans down there on the field than it sounded like they were up in the stands. And I saw some of the videos where guys were saying, I don't even go here. But you know what? Nashville is a great sports town. They adopted the Titans when the Oilers moved there, and it's become a great integration of entertainment and sports. The Preds is the same way. Like, I've always thought if Vandy could put a product on the field that was appealing and put it in a venue that was fun and comfortable to go to, that people would show up. And maybe this is the spark they needed. Maybe this is something that's going to create interest across that metropolitan area that can allow that football program to take it to the next level. I certainly hope it is, because I think with NIL right now and all the businesses that are in that Nashville area, I think it could be a program, that turns into what Stanford's been, what Duke has been, what Northwestern's been. I don't think there's any reason why you can't have a great education and have a great athletic department, particularly with a football program that's competitive in the SEC. You saw it, and at the end of the day, if it goes back and becomes that, I think you'll look at Diego Pavia as the guy that kind of started it all with what he was able to do to bring that swag and entertainment to the program. I
mean, he's put them on a map and on the map in a meaningful way, and that's all you can ask for right now. And I agree with your assessment absolutely. But Chris Doring of the SEC Network is here. Also, you can hear him on Sirius XM in the mornings as well. It's Florida week for Tennessee. It's Tennessee week for Florida. This is a huge game every year, regardless of where these two teams are in the standings. And in particular, Chris, I'm sure you're familiar with battered Vol syndrome, BVS, that this fan base carries with them. Losing to Arkansas and then hosting Florida, with Florida coming off a win and Billy Napier's team looking, saltier than they have in the first couple of weeks. This is an all-time BVS game if I've ever seen one. And honestly, it could be a defining moment for Billy Napier, who's fighting to keep his job at this point.
Yeah. So, I come on your show a lot as a SEC Network guy. Today, I'm probably that and former Gator player. So I don't want ball fans to hear this coming from me as a Gator alum. I picked Tennessee to be a 10-win team in the offseason. I was there in the spring for their first scrimmage and saw something that looked a little different, that looked like it had some opportunity this year. I saw a schedule that I felt was a little bit more manageable than maybe some of the other teams in the SEC. So the pieces were there, and I'm really impressed through the first month of the season. And then you look back on hindsight and say, well, maybe some of those wins weren't quite as legitimate given what the teams are turning out to be. That test of going on the road to Arkansas and playing in that environment, I knew it was going to be tough. But I think what we're seeing from the Vols offense is what we're seeing from a lot of the offenses in the SEC, and that's inconsistent quarterback play. At the end of the day, Nico Iamaleava is still just a freshman. He's still learning. He's got a great future ahead of him. But you're going to see moments like you saw against Arkansas where you're confused, your eyes are in the wrong place, you're late on throws, you're inaccurate with throws. He's got to learn from those things and get better. But I think it's concerning not only that, but when you're staked to a 14-3 lead and even late, the opposing quarterback goes down and yet you still give up what ends up being a game-winning drive. Those are all things that are concerning to me. I thought we were past that with the Tennessee defense, but I guess we're not at this point. So Florida has their own set of problems. Florida has 3 wins that I think are a little fraudulent themselves. You beat Samford, an FCS team. You beat a really bad Mississippi State team, and you beat a UCF team that I don't know wins another game this year with as bad as they look too. So the point spread kind of illustrates, I think, where people see Florida being right now. But I do think that they had probably their best game plan of the Napier era the last time Florida went to Knoxville. Anthony Richardson was the quarterback. They used him well outside of the pocket. Some of the opportunities to throw the ball on boots and nakeds were I think, something they hadn't done before. I don't really worry about the offense. Graham Mertz, to me, needs to be playing every single down in this offense right now. I think he brings a great amount of experience, leadership, and rhythm to that offense. The problem that I have is defensively. And, they've been bad against the run. They've been even worse against the pass. Tennessee should have their way with them being able to do whatever they want moving the football. They did have a good plan last year, but that was without Mays in the lineup at the center position. So I don't know how they slow Tennessee down, and I'm not sure that Florida can score enough to stay with the Vols this week.
Yeah, it's just from our perspective, Chris, and I know you watch plenty of them too. It just looks like Tennessee is slowing Tennessee down. Like what Nico is maybe not seeing when he's trying to push the ball deep constantly. Yeah. Again, I don't know what his progressions are. I'm not here to criticize play calling. I'm not qualified to do so, but there just seems to be something's not quite meshing between coach, scheme, and quarterback, coupled with bad protection that he's also working against right now. And he's just inexperienced. There's a lot of stuff going on there.
Yeah, there is. And a lot of it, as you mentioned, kind of starts with the offensive line protection, but also blocking assignments in the run game. I mean, I think that's one of the things that Josh Heupel's built his offenses on, is being able to run the football. They didn't do it very well against Oklahoma. They didn't do it very well against Arkansas. They didn't end up statistically. It looked good because of some long runs that they were able to break off, but it's not being able to line up and move the ball consistently the way that you like to see them do it, running the football. And even those throws, everybody talks about they have an answer for everything, the number count in the box, throwing it out to the receivers on some of those screens. I don't think people realize the nuances of throwing those screens with great accuracy to the correct shoulder, to the upfield shoulder, to be able to get momentum moving up the field. There were a number of throws that were behind guys that allowed inside-out pursuit from the defense that you couldn't get past that initial defender where you have a block on the edge because of the lack of momentum that the throw kept you from creating. So there's a lot that goes into playing in that offense as a quarterback. And I think just getting back to being confident, letting it rip, and throwing with great accuracy is something I'd like to see from Nico this week.
You can hear him on SiriusXM. You can watch him on the SEC Network. He is Chris Doring, and we did get smarter. See? We did it. That's all right. It wasn't that hard.
Yeah, you convinced me that I brought something today. I hope I contributed a little bit, but definitely appreciate you having me. It's always fun to be on with you, man.
Always a pleasure. Street meet on Broadway on me next time you're in town. Good to see you. Chris Doring
Sounds good, bro.
Of the SEC Network there with us on 104.5 The Zone. Titans head coach Brian Callahan. He's next. The Tennessee Men's Clinic is here to clear up any misconceptions that you may have if you're a dude who's dealing with erectile dysfunction. Lots of men assume that if the pills don't work, they have no other options than irreversible surgery to treat their ED. And the sad reality is that if you go to a doctor to treat your ED, those may be the only protocols they have available for you. The last thing that you want in any situation is irreversible surgery. But specifically to treat erectile dysfunction, make sure you've talked to the experts at the Tennessee Men's Clinic, and they will help you get right. The Tennessee Men's Clinic specialize in men's sexual health. It's all they do, and it makes them the experts in the field. They have access to multiple protocols and options to treat your ED based on your specific needs and what's going on in your body. They have treatments for everything from low testosterone, ED, treatments that increase size and stamina, and everything else in between. So schedule an appointment online today at TennesseeMen'sClinic.com for Franklin or Midtown, their two locations, or give them a call at 615-208-9090. That's 615-208-9090 or online at TennesseeMen'sClinic.com. Welcome back to the show. We are fueled by Hattie B's Hot Chicken. Lunch is upon us. Think about the best hot chicken in Nashville and get some Hattie B's at any one of their Middle Tennessee locations today or order online. The Hattie B's app is great, easy to use, and it even comes with a free dessert with your first order. Exciting stuff. So, Brian Callahan at the podium. Titans make some transactions before the press conference occurs. Leroy Watson, the offensive tackle, promoted. John Ojukwu waived from the active roster. Their plan is to put him back on P squad, so just a quick swap of the two tackles. But the most interesting thing today is Trevor Siemian, quarterback, practice squad for the Titans. What does that mean for Will Levis? Well, you can hear from Brian Callahan for yourself.
A couple things. First things first, you guys see my T-shirt, obviously. This is for the NFL's Crucial Catch. You'll see players, coaches, a lot of guys wearing these shirts pregame, honoring whoever it is they feel like honoring that had battled with cancer, and the different types of colors correspond to the type of cancer. So this is my aunt. This is Kathleen Guion is her name. She's my dad's sister. She had a type of leukemia. She has since beat it. So she's doing great, but just a cool opportunity to honor her and her battle that she went through with it. So that's why I have the shirt on. You'll see a lot of guys have them on Sunday. As far as roster moves go today, you'll see Legarius, Jeff, and Hop will have their rest days today. That'll come up as on the injury report. And then we cut John Joku off the active. We will be signing him back to the practice squad. We'll elevate Leroy Watson to come get his competition at right tackle. We also signed Trevor Siemian today, currently to the practice squad, just to have another veteran quarterback, just have some learn this week and have some familiarity. So if we needed him for the emergency third on game day, we could potentially use him. So just with a quarterback dealing with an injury, it was the smart thing for us to do as an insurance policy to have Trevor come in and get some familiarity with our offense. Other than that, I think that's it for as far as injuries go that are in roster moves that are updated. So with that, I'll let you guys go ahead.
Does Trevi, the Siemian move indicate anything about Will's status? Or
no, it was more looking at he goes out of the game. We got one quarterback that can play. So just getting a guy in that can at least have some familiarity as an insurance to have a third quarterback in that's a veteran guy. I know I have said before that I'd prefer a younger one. I would for developmental purposes, but this is a different situation. This is more of a making sure we have someone that could be ready if we need him. So that's sort of where we're at with.
Do you expect Will to be a full go today, or do you expect to have to limit him?
I do. I think he'll be close to full. We may limit him a little bit just because, but again, we'll see. He's going to go out and throw, and we're going to see how he feels and how his body responds. So intent is for him to practice, and he'll practice as much as he can tolerate, and hopefully feel pretty good. But again, we'll see. There'll be no. We'll probably list him as limited on their injury report, just so you guys are aware.
Been with Siemian a couple of times before, is that right?
2 different times, yeah. I was with Trevor when we drafted him in the 7th round in Denver. I left that year in 2015. He ended up starting the next season in 16. And then we had him in camp, off-season in camp last year in Cincinnati, competing for that backup spot. So been around a lot, seen a lot of football, has a lot of offenses in his brain, I'm sure. But I know Trevor well, and I trust him. And if for a guy to come in and pick it up, he's up to that task.
How's it looking for Jeffrey? I expect him to be out there today.
He'll rest today. It's his normal Wednesday rest day. But I do feel I feel positive about where he's at. Again, he's a we'll see still at this point, but feel good about him today.
How's Leroy done kind of developing under your watch since he got here in April?
Yeah, he's done a nice job. He's still a young player, even though he's been in the league for a little bit, but he's going to get a chance to compete and just see what he's got. And I think that's the right move for our offensive line and for our team is to see what he has and what he can help us, where he can help us. And he's done a nice job. He's obviously familiar with a little bit of the system to some degree with the time in Cleveland, but it's just an opportunity for him, and we'll see what he does with it.
A split reps situation this week?
Yeah, as best we can. I mean, they'll both work, and we'll see where we end at the end of the week.
Is there anything you say to Will about playing through pain, being smart through pain? I know you've had quarterbacks deal with that before. Just what are the best practices there?
I just ask him to be honest and be smart. And ultimately, as long as he feels like he can go do his job as an NFL quarterback, and that's make all the throws and be able to take hits and all those things and feel good enough that your level of play is not going to dip because of it, then let's roll. But if at any point you feel like you can't do something that's going to ultimately hurt him or hurt our team because you can't function in the same level or same manner that you're used to, that's when you have to be smart about it, and that's for me to make the decision at the end of the day. But I do trust that he'll be honest and give us the right feedback on how he feels and how his body feels by the time we get ready to kick off on Sunday. So it's an important, open, and honest conversation that him and I have together about how he feels and how effective he feels he can be. And the minute you don't feel like you can be effective enough to help the team win, then that's when you have to make a decision to go with somebody else. And that's every position across the board. But certainly for the quarterback, if you can't perform the requisite skills at the level necessary, then you're putting us at a disadvantage. So that's the best way to answer it.
The thing that had a lot of people excited about Will last year, administratively, coaching-wise here, were the occasional brilliant throws.
No doubt.
And I guess you talked about some of those on tape when you arrived. Outside of maybe the 40-yard touchdown against the Jets that he snuck between two defenders, how many of those kinds of throws do you feel like he's made this season?
Probably. I mean, again, small sample size too, but I think he made a couple. I think he made a few more over the course of the season last year. And we'll keep trying to find places for him to make those. I thought that the throw that got intercepted against the Jets was an aggressive throw that you'd like to, had you come down with it, you feel pretty good about. He made a really nice throw to Calvin on a bench route in that game too, late in the game. Beautiful timing and anticipation, accuracy. And he's thrown a couple other balls that may not be as exciting as some, but are still really, really good throws. We're still trying to find ways to unlock that too, try to get more balls down the field, a little more explosive when we can. But yeah, those are the things that makes Will an exciting player, and got to keep finding ways to let him do that.
Why do you think coming into a situation with an offensive coach and that's your MO with the quarterback and all the guys you've been to, we would have expected those to have shown up more often, not less?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of factors that go into it. The biggest one probably is that our opportunities have been limited in some senses, especially with the turnovers and the protection of them. I mean, some of those throws require some time, and we have not probably done a good enough job in that realm to provide some of the time necessary to make those. And then some of it's just me calling more plays that allow him to do that too. So there's a lot of factors that go in. So I'm hopeful that we can continue to unlock that stuff as we keep moving forward.
Along those lines, in terms of his development and those types of things, is it possible that the league has now seen him as kind of adjusted to try and take away his strengths, and now it's on him and you to try to readjust to open some different things up?
Yeah, that's the cat and mouse game, and every year, defenses are pretty determined to stop explosive plays and not let those types of throws be had. And there's a patience involved in some of it too, and knowing when to check the ball down. It's all of those things together, and we got to adapt and adjust when those things aren't there. A lot of things that I can help with in that regard, and then. It's the patience part of it, that those things come, and when you start hunting those plays too much, you put yourself in position to make some mistakes too. So again, I think it's all of those things. There's no one singular answer to that. All of it has a part in the process.
Of course, you can't speak for him, but when you have a quarterback that's talking about rewiring his thought process, getting that time to sit back and watch the game, and then having this time off, is there something that can be gained for that? Can that help the game kind of slow down? Can he benefit from the rest?
There's always time to benefit. You can always gain something from observing. I'm still a big advocate of learning by doing. I think quarterbacks, there's no substitute for experience. There's no better way to learn than some failure as well. I mean, you got to learn those lessons, and I think that's how you get better fast. But certainly, there's a time and a place where you can learn by watching others, by stepping back out of the intensity of it. Sometimes there's things to be gained from that, but I'll always probably stand on the table for quarterbacks needing to experience and play to learn the lessons they need to learn. There's no other way you can simulate it or teach it other than letting guys play.
As you guys sort of self-scattered and I guess evaluated the last couple of weeks, were there any things like systematically or scheme-wise that you felt you could do to help Will, to aid Will?
Yeah, there's definitely things that we felt we could do more of, do better, do less of some of the things that maybe we hadn't had as much success. So, yeah, I felt good coming out of the bye about some of the things that we can do to help schematically, in the run game and the pass game and the protection game. I think I got a pretty good grasp, I think, of what I can do to help that process, and I think that's important for me. And then, then we got to go out and do it.
Rewiring point, are there specific areas where you've seen that happen? Is it too small of a sample size to say, or can you give us concrete areas where he's changed?
Yeah, I mean, I think if you look at his, I think when he's completed the ball at a pretty good rate, which is part of playing the position. He's been really pretty patient. I've called a handful of play action plays that didn't necessarily have the shot down the field we were hoping for, and he did a really good job of quickly finding the check down and moving us on to the next play. And that's a maturity process of playing quarterback. Those things I've been encouraged with in the early part of the season, and now there's a you never want to take the aggressiveness away from the quarterback, and I think that's the fine line. Is you want to be aggressive, you got to toe the line a little bit. There's part of playing quarterback that's in Will's DNA of, there's a little bit of effort, I'll dive for the first down. I'll throw the ball into that coverage. So you got to have that balance, but you have to have that. You don't ever want to get to a point where a quarterback that's aggressive in nature has to feel like he has to dial it back. So you work through that process, and I think he's done a good job of that. He's completed the balls when asked. And then again, that's kind of to Paul's question about the aggressiveness and the balls down the field and the kind of the moments of brilliance that he's had in his 13 starts. That's just finding the balance of when to do it and how to make sure we're helping the team while still being aggressive. So yeah, it's a very fine line you walk.
You got another week where some uncertainty about the opposing team's quarterback. Mm-hmm. How are they different with Flacco and Richardson, and maybe what's the challenge with each one?
I mean, the challenge with Flacco is his veteranness. He is not afraid to throw the ball down the field. They go hunting up for some shots as much as possible. He's certainly capable. I think he's one of the better deep ball throwers in football in general. Always has been. So that part you have to manage. He may not be able to move like Richardson can, but he doesn't need to because he knows where to go with the ball. And he ends up finding completions. Whereas Richardson, you just see the immense talent. I mean, the throws that he's put on tape are pretty remarkable. His ability to put the ball in his hand is a totally different dynamic as a runner. And you sort of have to treat the two quarterbacks in a different manner with your rush packages and how you rush the quarterback and, all those things that go into the different styles. But, yeah, there couldn't be, like, more polar opposite styles you're getting ready for than Joe and Anthony. And they both have, they're all capable of beating you, and they have talent. They're just very different styles, and it's a challenge.
Do you feel like, whether it's coaches or players, they're a little bit more relaxed now that you kind of got the proverbial monkey off your back with the first win of the season?
I hope not. I hope we're still hungry as ever. I hope we still feel like we haven't won a game. There's an edge that we played with on Monday night that I thought was really positive. Our focus was outstanding, and you never want to relax. Sure, I think it feels good that we've gotten, you're not over. That certainly feels good. But I liked where our team was last week. I like how we played. And look, I told our team in our team meeting after the game, we've won one game, and I'd like to win a lot more than one. And I think that any feeling of relaxing, any feeling of that we've arrived is obviously incredibly premature. And I don't mean that's what the question that you asked, but I like the edge our team plays with when our back's up against the wall a bit, and I hope it stays that way.
When you look at Ridley's numbers for the last couple of weeks, What are some reasons that factor into those kind of numbers?
Well, the Miami game was the amount of runs that we had in the game. Sort of take that game in and of itself. But yeah, I got to do a better job of finding ways to get Calvin the ball. Need to use his speed and explosiveness more. Just get it in his hands every which way we can. And that's, again, that's on me to get him in those spots where he can get the ball more and let Will play football. But need to find a way to get him going. I told him that this morning too. Just, hey man, got to find a way to get you going and just be patient. We'll get it to you. But he's great. He's a team player. He just wants to win. But like all those guys, they want their part of the action and want to be able to help. So that's mostly on me to find ways to give him the ball.
Do you ever have concerns about guys like that coming in after a big contract and maybe pressing it all?
No. And those are the things that you have the relationship and the conversation with him about it. Just like I told him, he doesn't need to press. It's on me to find ways to get it to him. Just keep playing football and the ball come your way. Because anytime you start trying to do too much or go out of your way or press to try to make plays, usually the negative things happen. So let the game come to you and let the ball come to you, and it will. Same thing I told Hop early on too. It's the same process that we got to keep finding ways to get you involved, keep you involved, and don't trust me. It's on my mind. I'm trying to do the best I can to get it to you. So just let it come to you, and we'll keep rolling.
That is Titans head coach Brian Callahan at the podium, his first press conference of the week. The Titans did practice on Monday, but it will be their first official practice right now. We will react to what Brian Callahan had to say about the quarterback coming up next. Looking for a longer lasting fog light for your drive? Upgrade to Sylvania LED fog bulbs. Easy to install LED fog light bulbs will get you out of the driveway and back onto the road in no time. Sylvania is the guiding light for all your power sport and fog bulb needs. For a limited time, get a $20 O'Reilly gift card after rebate with purchase of select Sylvania LED fog bulbs plus 2 times O Rewards points. O'Reilly Auto Parts is celebrating the 25th anniversary of their famous jingle, and they want you to be a part of the celebration. We want you to submit a cover of the jingle, a remix, or your own choreographed dance for the opportunity to win exclusive merch and prizes, including 3 $5,000 grand prize winners from O'Reilly Auto Parts. Submit your video to O'ReillyJingleContest.com now through October 31st. Terms and conditions apply. No purchase necessary. Okay, so a couple of things to recap from Brian Callahan's press conference. Last call for phone calls. If you got them, practice starts at 1:05. So I am going to scurry out of here right after the show and head on over there. And we'll see if he throws or not. He's going to be listed as limited, probably will be listed as limited for the game, will be Will Levis. Trevor Siemian's acquisition, basically break glass in case of emergency, it sounds like. But I mean, their messaging is if Will Levis is going to be the starting quarterback on Sunday, right? There's nothing from that press conference that would indicate Mason Rudolph's even going to like split reps.
Yeah, looking like Levis.
So, okay. Bleep around and find out. Let's bleep around and find out with the quarterback, I guess. Which is, that's what this season is. It's mess around, find out. Do you have a quarterback? Can you keep him long term? Do you need to try and move him as an asset? Is he going to actually be an asset? I mean, if you could get picks for, not that we're at this point yet, but if you can get picks for Kenny Pickett or Desmond Ridder or Sam Howell or any of these other quarterbacks that got traded this offseason, Malik Willis, somebody will give you something for Levis if, in fact, this experiment does not work out. But week 6, still mess around and find out time. So, sounds a little less certain around the Colts quarterback situation, though they have been less forthcoming about, all right, where each player is in their respective timeline. Joe Flacco started for them against the Jags in a loss, not on Flacco, as far as I could tell. The Colts defense is hideous. Flacco did his best, did his damnedest to will them back to a win in the fourth quarter. Jags had already gotten up by too much at that point to make it a meaningful comeback. Richardson, if you're looking for the easier opponent, I don't know how much. I don't know how do sports fans view this, because I've always gone back and forth with it with my own team. Do you want to see the best version of an opponent so you can say, yeah, I went out and beat them at their best? Or are most sports fans just like, take the lesser quarterback, let's take the easier path to victory. Let's not make this harder than it needs to be for a team that's already made winning pretty damn hard.
I think it depends on the team.
What is this fan base thinking right now? Give me the easier quarterback to play. Just give me the win.
Yeah. I'd like the win, please.
Which is fine. That can have context, but like, all right, say you got the Chiefs in the AFC title game. Are you hoping that who's the backup right now? Is it still Gabbert?
I think so.
I want to say.
No, I believe he retired.
Blaine Gabbert retired?
I want to say he did.
Oh, congratulations to Blaine, 2-time Super Bowl champion, Blaine Gabbert. If he did in fact retire, I don't know that to be so. But if you want the easier path to victory, it would seem Richardson would be the easier quarterback to play. Flacco poses more of a threat right now than Richardson, given some of the routine stuff that he's not able to cleanly execute. For Levis, though, all right, if you're going to do it on a bad shoulder, bud, you better play as cleanly as humanly possible. I mean, because how far along do we get in this season before they actually consider pulling the plug?
Week 10.
What's week 10? Who is week 10? You have a schedule back there on the wall behind you. I don't know how you can read that in that dark, tiny little room that you're in.
That would be at the Chargers.
Oh. So you still wouldn't have faced a second AFC South team yet, because the Colts are the only one that you'll have played to this point in the season and until, again, week 12. I don't know. I mean, it depends on how they lose, right? It depends on what he looks like, what he does, how he manages the situation, if he's capable of managing the situation from start to finish, because we don't know that yet about Will Levis. All right, let's do some polls.
I am not Lucas Panzica, but these are the polls presented by Two Rivers Ford, the South's most trusted Ford dealer. What's the dumbest thing in sports? Eldon going, the idea that Aaron Rodgers was just as surprised as everyone that Saleh was fired hours after a phone conversation with the owner.
He did McAfee today. I don't know if he said anything interesting or anything beyond what he's already said about it. But, I mean, I still don't have a clear answer on why they fired him. Because some of you are alleging that it's the Lebanese flag that he had on his shoulder in the London game prior to kickoff. Some of you are saying it's because he tried to make Todd Downing the play caller instead and demoted or tried to demote Nathaniel Hackett, even though it sounds like the new Jets coaching staff is going to do the exact same thing.
I saw something where it was he made the call, he told Hackett and Downing, and then 5 minutes later he was fired.
I don't know what to believe coming out of New York. There's a bunch of conflicting reports. It's all a mess. The Jets are a poverty franchise, and I pity their fan base. I really do. I feel bad for you.
What is the most fixable issue the Titans have right now? John says, you would think special teams, but every time you think it'll be better, it just isn't. That was sad, John. Made me sad.
I mean, Calais Campbell got a hand on one. He didn't. I mean, does that count as a block if you tip it?
Not really.
Not really. Like, I don't know if statistically it's officially marked as blocked, but yeah, I mean, well, Calais Campbell is also like 6'9". He's
also like 40.
It doesn't. He's one of the best defensive linemen in the league. What do you mean? He's going to Ndamukong Suh his way through the rest of his career. I mean, Suh wasn't that old.
A 40-year-old defensive tackle should not make it to your punter to be able to tip that punt.
I don't think there's a precedent. I think he's the Tom Brady of defensive linemen. This man doesn't age. Calais Campbell is still excellent at what he does, but your point is well taken. They didn't get a punt blocked technically against Miami, but Calais Campbell got fingers on it, and that was less than ideal. That, ironically enough, ended up working out like in the Titans' favor with how weird the special teams calls, especially the officiating, was in that game.
Which combination of Vols games are now must win? 72% going Florida-Bama, 28% Florida-Georgia.
Yeah, Florida-Bama is the correct answer. Those two games are at home. Georgia on the road. Again, Nico and Josh Heupel could prove something to me that we haven't seen them do yet against quality conference competition to date in these next two games, and maybe change my tune on how difficult it will be for this offense in particular to go win at Georgia. So Florida, beatable opponent. Alabama, vulnerable, but you have to be able to score, and the Vols offense it's gone missing.
What is the biggest difference between the Titans and the Colts right now? Big Za says they've got better quarterbacks and a better offensive line. We have a better defense.
That's true. I don't think I could sum it up better than that. Those are the polls?
Those are the polls.
Excellent. That's the show for the day. Primetime tonight. If you missed Greg Cosell earlier, the episode of The Install will be posted separately. If you missed any of today's radio show, whether that's Chris Doring, whether that's Cosell, or any of the fun that we had in between, you can subscribe to the podcast, The Buck Rising Show, wherever it is that you get your podcasts. Blaine and Zach are coming up next.